When a casual morning walk turns into a moment frozen in time, one woman's attention to detail exposes something so disturbing it sends police racing to the scene within minutes. What started as an ordinary selfie, the kind shared without a second thought, became the key to uncovering a hidden crime that had gone unnoticed for years.
Ever wondered where you really come from? Not the stories, but the science. On this channel, we decode real DNA, uncover lost ancestries, and bring ancient genomes to life through cinematic storytelling. If that excites you, subscribe for weekly insights. Like the video to support science-based history, and drop a comment. Your questions help guide what we explore next.
Mark Ellison woke just after sunrise, the pale gray light slipping through the curtains of his modest suburban home. The house was quiet in that calm, in-between hour when the world hadn't fully decided to wake up yet. He lay still for a moment, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the soft ticking of the kitchen clock down the hall. Beside him, his wife Rachel slept on her side, one arm tucked beneath the pillow, her breathing slow and even. Mark carefully slipped out of bed, moving on instinct so he wouldn't wake her. Morning walks had become his routine over the past few months, a way to clear his head before work and burn off the stress that always seemed to follow him home. His job as a civil engineer meant long hours, deadlines, and constant pressure. Walking helped him reset. He pulled on a hoodie, laced his sneakers, and scribbled a quick note on the kitchen counter. Out for a walk, back soon, love you. The neighborhood was still half asleep when Mark stepped outside. Rows of tidy houses lined the street, their lawns neatly trimmed, cars parked in driveways like obedient sentinels. A light fog hovered close to the ground, giving everything a muted, almost dreamlike quality. He started down the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, breath puffing faintly in the cool air. A few blocks away sat Briarwood Greenway, a long public walking path that cut through a strip of trees and brush separating two residential areas. It wasn't wilderness, not really, but it felt removed enough to offer a sense of solitude. Mark liked it for that reason. It was familiar, safe, and usually empty at that hour. He entered the path, the sound of gravel crunching under his shoes replacing the quiet hum of the street. Birds chirped faintly from somewhere in the trees, and sunlight filtered through bare branches in thin golden streaks. Mark walked at an easy pace, letting his thoughts wander. A meeting later that afternoon, a project review next week, the small argument he and Rachel had brushed aside the night before over something trivial, already forgotten. About halfway down the path, he reached a spot he particularly liked. The trail curved slightly, opening up to a small clearing where the trees thinned and an old concrete drainage structure sat just off the path. It was one of those forgotten municipal constructions, a wide culvert built decades ago to channel rainwater beneath the trail. Over time, dirt and leaves had gathered around it, and vines crept across the surface, softening its harsh lines. Mark paused there, as he often did. The light hit just right in the mornings, casting long shadows and giving the place a quiet, almost cinematic feel. On impulse, he pulled out his phone. Rachel liked when he sent him little updates during the day, and he figured a quick selfie would make her smile when she woke up. He stood with the path behind him, the culvert partially visible over his shoulder. He smiled, squinting slightly against the light, and snapped the photo. It was nothing special, just a man on his morning walk, relaxed and content. He typed a short message, "Morning walk before work, beautiful out here." With a tap, he slipped his phone back into his pocket, unaware that the background of that image held something he had completely missed, something that would change both their days in ways neither of them could have imagined. Back at home, Rachel Ellison stirred as the sun climbed higher. She rolled onto her back, stretching, then reached instinctively for the warm space beside her. Empty. She blinked, orienting herself, then noticed the note on the counter as she shuffled into the kitchen in her socks.
She smiled when she read it. Mark's walks had become part of their rhythm. She poured herself a cup of coffee, the rich smell filling the room, and leaned against the counter as her phone buzzed. Mark's message. She opened the photo, still half asleep, expecting nothing more than his familiar grin and a glimpse of the path he loved so much. And at first glance, that's exactly what it was. Mark looked relaxed, happy, his hoodie zipped halfway, his hair slightly messy from sleep. The scene behind him looked peaceful, almost picturesque. Rachel took a sip of coffee and smiled. Then, for reasons she couldn't quite explain, she looked at the photo again. Maybe it was habit, maybe it was instinct. Rachel worked as a graphic designer, and years of staring at images had trained her eye to notice small details others overlooked. She zoomed in slightly, more out of reflex than concern, scanning the background while Mark's smiling face slid out of frame. That's when her stomach tightened. Just beyond his shoulder, near the mouth of the concrete structure, something didn't sit right. At first, it was nothing specific, just a shape, a shadow where a shadow shouldn't be. Rachel frowned and zoomed in further, the image pixelating slightly as it enlarged. Her heart skipped. There, partially obscured by darkness and debris, was something that looked disturbingly like fabric. Not leaves, not trash. Fabric, folded in unnatural angles, and beneath it something pale that contrasted too sharply with the surrounding dirt and concrete. Rachel set her coffee down slowly, her hands suddenly unsteady. "No," she whispered to herself. She zoomed in again, her fingers trembling now, the image sharpened just enough for her brain to connect the dots her eyes were already struggling to accept. A shoe, a leg, motionless, tucked awkwardly near the edge of the culvert, hidden in plain sight. Her breath caught in her throat. For a long moment, Rachel just stared at the screen, her mind racing, desperately trying to reinterpret what she was seeing. Maybe it was debris. Maybe it was an old mannequin. Maybe the light was playing tricks on her. But the longer she looked, the more undeniable it became. This wasn't an object. It was a person. Her pulse thundered in her ears as a wave of nausea rolled through her. The peaceful morning shattered in an instant, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Mark had been standing just feet away from that spot, smiling, oblivious. Rachel's hand shook as she locked her phone screen, then immediately unlocked it again, as if hoping the image would somehow change. It didn't. Her first instinct was to call Mark. She tapped his name, lifting the phone to her ear as it rang. Once, twice, straight to voicemail. Her anxiety spiked. She tried again. The same result. Her mind spiraled. What if he was still there? What if someone dangerous was nearby? What if that person wasn't dead? Rachel forced herself to breathe, gripping the edge of the counter to steady herself. She knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was in that photo was not something to ignore, and waiting was not an option. She unlocked her phone one more time, her fingers hovering for just a second before she made the call that would send police rushing toward Briarwood Greenway. The line clicked, and a calm, steady voice answered on the other end. "Emergency services. What's your location?" Rachel swallowed hard, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear herself think. She gave her address automatically, the words tumbling out faster than she intended. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, thin and shaky, as if it belonged to someone else. "I need to report something. My husband went for a walk this morning. He sent me a photo. I think there's a body in it." There was a brief pause on the line. Not disbelief, not alarm, just careful attention. "Ma'am, can you explain exactly what you're seeing?"
Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, then reopened the photo, zooming in again despite the way her stomach turned. She described the concrete culvert, the fabric, the shoe, the leg. She emphasized where it was, how close it appeared to be to the walking path. She explained that Mark didn't realize anything was wrong when he took the picture. "Have you spoken to your husband since receiving the image?" the operator asked. "I've tried," Rachel replied quickly. "He's not answering. He usually loses reception in that area." "All right," the operator said. "You did the right thing by calling. We're going to send officers to check the location immediately. Can you tell me where along the path the photo was taken? Rachel thought back to the countless walks she'd taken with Mark before her schedule changed. She described the entrance Mark usually used, the bend in the trail, the old drainage structure that locals had complained about for years. The operator asked follow-up questions, each one grounding Rachel just enough to keep her from panicking completely. "Please stay available," the operator said before ending the call. "An officer may contact you for additional details." The moment the line went dead, the house felt too quiet. Rachel stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, her reflection faintly visible in the darkened screen. Her hands were cold, her legs weak. She forced herself to move, pacing from room to room, checking the front window, then the back, as if Mark might suddenly appear on the driveway, waving, everything perfectly normal. Her phone buzzed again. Hope flared, then died just as quickly when she saw it wasn't Mark. It was an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Ellison?" a male voice asked when she answered. "This is Officer Daniel Perez with local police. We're responding to your call. I just want to confirm a few details." Relief washed through her at the sound of authority, even as fear tightened her chest. She answered his questions carefully, repeating what she'd already told the dispatcher. Officer Perez thanked her and told her officers were en route to the Greenway. A second unit would attempt to locate Mark along the path to ensure he was safe. After the call ended, Rachel sank onto the couch, clutching her phone. Minutes stretched unbearably long. Every sound outside made her flinch. A car passing, a dog barking somewhere down the street. Her thoughts kept circling back to the image, to how easily it could have gone unnoticed. How many people had walked past that spot without seeing anything at all? Meanwhile, unaware of the chain reaction he'd set into motion, Mark continued along the Greenway at his usual pace. He'd passed the clearing and moved deeper into the stretch of trees where the path narrowed slightly. The fog had begun to lift, replaced by warmer sunlight, and he felt that familiar sense of calm settling in. He stopped to stretch near a bench, checking his watch. He still had time before he needed to head back. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his phone, half expecting a reply from Rachel. The screen showed no new notifications, and a weak signal indicator flickered, then disappeared altogether. He frowned, but shrugged it off. It wasn't unusual. He slipped the phone away and continued walking, unaware that officers were now converging on the very spot he'd left behind. At Briarwood Greenway, 2 patrol cars arrived within minutes of each other, parking near the main entrance. Officers stepped out, scanning the area, their expressions serious but controlled. Yellow tape remained in the trunks for now. This was still a welfare check and a possible discovery, nothing confirmed. Officer Perez met briefly with another officer, pulling up the photo Rachel had sent. Even on his phone screen, the image was unsettling. He nodded toward the path. "That culvert's about a quarter-mile in," he said. "Let's start there." They moved quickly but cautiously, boots crunching over gravel as they followed the trail. The morning quiet was broken only by the sound of radios and measured footsteps. As they approached the clearing, one of the officers slowed, lifting a hand. "There," he said quietly.
The concrete structure came into view, just as Rachel had described. From a distance, nothing seemed out of place. It looked like what it had always been, old, forgotten, unremarkable. Then they stepped closer. The officer nearest the culvert bent slightly, peering into the shadowed opening. He froze. "Yeah," he said under his breath, "that's not debris." Within seconds, the area was secured. One officer radioed from additional units, while another marked the spot, careful not to disturb anything. From their angle, the body was partially concealed by dirt and trash, but there was no mistaking what it was. The clothing was worn and discolored, the exposed skin pale and unmoving. Back at home, Rachel's phone rang again. Her heart leapt into her throat as she answered. "Mrs. Ellison?"
Officer Perez said. His voice was steady, but there was no softness this time. "We've located what appears to be human remains at the location you described. You were right to call." Rachel pressed her hand to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. A mix of horror and grim validation washed over her. She hadn't imagined it. "Is my husband okay?" she asked, the question bursting out of her. "We haven't made contact with him yet," the officer replied honestly, "but we have units searching the path now. Based on your timeline, we believe he's still in the area." Rachel nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Please," she said quietly, "please find him." As officers expanded the perimeter and more patrol cars arrived, the greenway transformed from a peaceful walking path into an active investigation. Neighbors began to notice the flashing lights through the trees. Curious onlookers slowed as they passed by, unaware of the grim discovery hidden just beyond the trail. And somewhere further down that same path, Mark Ellison walked on, unaware that his morning routine had placed him at the center of a discovery that would soon dominate headlines and reopen questions no one in the community was prepared to answer. Mark didn't have to walk much farther before he sensed something was off. The air felt different, charged in a way he couldn't quite explain. Then he heard his name. "Mark Ellison!" He stopped short, heart jumping, and turned toward the sound. An officer stepped onto the path from between the trees, one hand raised in a calming gesture. "Sir, please stay where you are." Confusion washed over Mark. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight. "Your wife called us," the officer said gently. "She was worried about you. We need you to come with us." Those words alone were enough to make Mark's stomach drop. He followed without protest, his mind racing through possibilities, all of them bad. As they walked back toward the clearing, the flashing lights became visible through the trees. The quiet trail he'd enjoyed just an hour earlier now felt heavy and unreal. When they reached the culvert, Mark saw it. He didn't need anyone to explain. The shape, the stillness, the unmistakable outline of a human body hidden in shadow. His chest tightened as the realization hit him all at once. It had been there when he took the selfie, right behind him. "I didn't see it," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "You couldn't have known. Most people wouldn't." Later, wrapped in a blanket near the trail entrance, Mark finally spoke to Rachel. Her voice broke as soon as she heard his. "I'm okay," he told her. "I saved you from walking right past something terrible." In the days that followed, investigators confirmed the remains had been there for years, overlooked by countless passers-by. One photo, one careful glance had uncovered the truth. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most important details sit quietly in the background, waiting for someone willing to really look. And when instinct speaks, listening can make all the difference.